All right, guys, so a big part of conjugate training and the dynamic days is gonna be the accommodated resistance. The accommodated resistance usually comes in two forms, so it's either gonna be band tension or chain weight, and that can be rotated in and out of speed waves, in and out of max effort work. But I wanted to go over real quick how to set some of that stuff up, A, so you don't kill yourself, but B, so you understand why it's used and how it's used and how to not use it improperly is kind of the big thing. So we'll start with bands, just because they're a little bit more tedious to set up and there's a little bit more thought that has to go behind it. So the first big benefit to bands against chains is the overspeed eccentric. So that means that the band is going to be pulling you down. When you go from the bottom up, it's pulling you down faster than the speed of gravity, which the chains just fall at the rate of gravity. So what that means is that you have to be a little bit faster, you coil a little bit faster underneath the band. If you ever try to do a tempo lift against band tension, and then the next rep do a very fast lift, you'll find out that the bands reward speed very quickly. This is great if you're a very strong lifter and you kind of have slower barbell movement, as opposed to if you're a very fast lifter. So my current training partner, Blanca, is very, very strong, but one of the things we need to work on with her is getting her bar speed up. I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm very, very fast with the barbell. If anybody's ever seen me lift it to me, my thirds usually look like openers, and if I miss a lift, I just don't get it. I don't have a great ability to grind because I'm much faster than I am strong. So I do a lot more chain work, and controversially, she does a lot more band work, and the result's been she's gotten much faster under heavy load, and I've gotten much stronger and able to grind through reps a little easier. So that's kind of the difference between band and chain. There's benefits for both. I weave both in and out. I don't just stick to one. I don't recommend anyone just sticks to one. But that's kind of like the overview, very basic difference between the two. The band tension, you have a little bit more of an intricate setup, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is a luggage scale, right? I got it off Amazon. It's like 20 or 30 bucks. For your band tension and your chain weight, this is key, right? You have to have this because you have to know how much you're lifting against. Especially if we're trying to stay in that 25% range, you can't just throw bands on there and expect to know what you're doing. So even with this little red band, I'm gonna show you 3 very easy setups that give you a vastly different amount of band weight, which is why it's important that you're tracking what you do and how you set it up. So the first one will be very simple. We're just gonna choke it around the bottom of the cage here. And this will act as a squatting barbell that we're going to use. So right here, this is what is like a single band tension weight. When you're taking your weight for your band tension, make sure A, you're set on pounds, but B, when you do it, you have the band at the very top of the squat, right? So this is giving us about 12 and a half pounds of resistance at the top here. If I were to go, and a very easy mistake, would start measuring where the top of the scale to the barbell, if we just hooked it right here, that shows up as 6 or 5.5 pounds, but look how much band tension we're missing here. We're missing about a foot of band tension, which will throw your calculations off really, really bad. So we have to make sure that we're measuring from where we're going to be taking the barbell at its highest point to get that tension. So that's number one, that's really important. So this is just a choked off band. We can go ahead and double that tension and do what's called like a quadded band setup. So now quadded 1, 2, 3, 4 times around the barbell. And that's gonna be quite a bit more tension than we have with the single loop there. And just to kind of give you an idea, we're at 12.5 pounds before. With the quadded, hook it back up, make sure the scale is in pounds. Yank it up to shoulder height. We're at about 38 pounds of band tension per side. So we're more than double. So that's a big difference, right? So that gives us 8, and obviously would be double. This is a single band. 12 would be 24 pounds the other way. This would be about 80 pounds this way. And then one of the last simple ways to set up would be like an L tie off, where we set one peg behind, then loop the first, so we still have that single band setup there, but we have an L now, so it just creates a little bit more tension. See where we're at here. That's about 12 too, so not a huge difference there between the choking it off. If we spread out the pegs, that would increase the tension, obviously. One of the points that we need to make sure when we're using band tension is at the bottom of the band, no matter what you're doing, we don't want to have slack in the band at the bottom. So whether we're doing a squat, a bench, or a deadlift, we always want a little bit of tension here. If this band gets slack, it's going to move around a lot, but it's going to defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do, because it's going to be a rapid load. So the band will be slack, the barbell will start moving, and then it will catch, and then it's going to throw you. So that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for static, constant tension in the line, and keeping constant tension on that band at all times. Another point worth noting, I see a lot of guys mess up on the squat or the bench, is when you're setting your band pegs, you're tying off, you want to make sure that that band is right about dead center of the ankle bone when you walk out your squat, and is right in line where you want the bar to touch on your bench press. Because if you end up walking out really far and the band is anchored in the front here, it's going to pull you forward. Now that might be great for somebody who is trying to work on kind of getting that upper back stronger, the lower back stronger, depending on where you're weak, and coming out of that good morning squat. There is a benefit there, but typically for speed work, we're not trying to put ourselves in that severe of a disadvantage using the accommodated resistance. So just be mindful that we want the bar path to stay as straight as possible, unless you're doing it with intent, which I would say that's more of a really advanced technique that most people are probably not ready for yet. The chains are a little bit easier to set up. A couple ways to do it. You can get one of these fancy little chain loading straps. I think Elite FTS sells them. I know a couple other sites do. And for sake of simple setup, we're just going to half our chain here. So we're going to fold the chain in half. We're going to anchor nice and easy. Throw a little carabiner here. And then depending on the height of the lifter, you can anchor at different points to kind of let the chain just hang there. And so when we're squatting down, we want the chain to be pretty much deloaded. And there's a lot of different ways to use chains, and we're just gonna keep this super basic right now. So we're gonna say at the bottom of the motion, we want the chain to be deloaded all the way. So as you squat down, or you do your bench press, or you do your deadlift, the chain comes down. At the very bottom, it's about here. As you stand up, the chain picks up. There's definitely, and that's gonna be another video, how to use chains in different ways. So we can set up chains where it's a rapid accommodation, which means that, like, if I was coming out of the hole with a squat, if I know my sticking point is about halfway up, I would set the chains up so they don't accommodate until halfway. And when I get to my point where I'm wanting to work the hardest, that's when the chains start to grab. So I start pushing through those sticking points. Another way is you could do a multi-level load, where we might have like a high chain and a low chain. So a light chain picks up first, halfway through, a heavier chain picks up, halfway through that, heaviest chain picks up again. So there's a ton of stuff you can do with it, but for right now, let's assume that everyone's just kind of starting out here. We want to deload the chain at the bottom of the movement completely, or almost completely, and then as we start to come out of the bottom portion of the movement, the chain's going to accommodate pretty quickly. And then one other thing about the chains that's kind of cool, and again, a little bit more of an advanced kind of technique here, but worth noting. If we were to set the chains up, so typically you'll look at this setup, and this is an improper setup for most people. There's too much chain off the ground. The chain is always off the ground. However, if you were trying to work on a little bit more stability, say in a bench press, there may be some benefit here to having chain off the ground, because it's going to cause you to stabilize a little harder, work those stabilizing muscles through the whole motion. So the chain starts to get some sway in it, and then, so this essentially will end up being bar weight, right? This is weight that's never gonna deload. So let's say we have a 50-pound chain for sake of argument. If we keep all of the chain off of the ground, we attach the chain very high, at the bottom of the bench press, you're still gonna have maybe 20 pounds of chain that's off the ground. That's just straight weight. So if you were gonna do that, you would have to decrease your barbell weight by that amount of poundage, or else you're just adding poundage to the barbell. But it is very challenging. It's a great way to work on stabilizers. Not something I would do all the time, but as an accessory, or maybe for one wave of speed work, it definitely has some benefit to it. But that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a million setups, there's a million ways to do this, and you gotta kind of figure out what works for you. But for the lifters that I'm coaching and myself, I found that 25% accommodation, whether it's band or chain, is a great starting point, and using that for the dynamic work. And then on the max effort work, there's an easy way. I mean, you could take the same, we'll say, one board press, and have a one board press straight weight with one chain, with two chain, with three chain, with red band, with a green band. So you can take the same movement, even on a max effort day, and you can have 15 different variations just using accommodating resistance without moving the grip on the bench, raising the height, raising anything else. So that's where Conjugate really does get fun, and especially for lifters who have been doing the same thing over and over and over, it gives you a little bit more stimulus and a little bit more kind of way to play and have some different stimulus in the gym, some fun in the gym. So things aren't so boring, you know, week in and week out. But that's about it for this. If you guys have any questions, if you want me to cover anything about the chains or the bands a little bit more in depth, let me know, and I'll do the best I can to get it out for you guys.